Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It is August 12th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And it was an uptrend today. What a difference a day makes. We've had a week or so, week or 2 weeks here where the market just seemed dead, and then suddenly you get a day like this, just when you're ready to throw in the towel and go take a vacation, and you get a day like this. So, uh, relatively straightforward day. There's a couple of different ways to look at today. Early on, I was playing the blue two-tiered channel, and honestly, I don't think it's a two-tiered channel there. I think it is, but I think it's like this, and you can kind of see the midline working up through there. So I think this is a smaller channel within the bigger brown channel, which you couldn't really find the bigger channel until you might have found it late this afternoon when these highs hit here, but when I say late this afternoon, I mean late morning. But really, it had to come back to here, and then when you drew that and drug it, and you can clearly see the midline. The midline is actually the real light blue one working up through there. I couldn't figure out how to change the color, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of time on it, so um, I actually drew this one with the little dual indicator. You can see, and you can see that blue one moving around there. It will always put it right in the dead center for you. And and you can see it's moving up through there, but I couldn't figure out how to make it blue. So I believe the brown channel is the larger pattern. And notice we get a break, 2 legs up to a new high, and then we sold off. And then on this one, you move up, you get a break, you get a couple of legs up, you sell off, and then that creates the break of the brown channel. So it all meshes together better like this. And notice that my measured move, there's your morning move, and there's your 2-legged correction right in there. And so we're looking for a measured move, and right in here you think there's no way we're ever getting to a measured move for the day. We get the break, 2 legs up, and I'll be dang, we missed it maybe by a tick or two. So these measured moves are powerful, and they don't work as well on range days, granted. So if you're trying to make them work, you can probably get the real short-term ones to work on on a range day. But for the most part, these work better when the market's trending, obviously. So, but we're going to back out here and talk about the trades. But you can see we spiked up and went into this channel. And I believe the brown channel is the main one, and I believe my blue one was a shorter term one, although it generated most of the trades, and there weren't many trades after that because we were breaking this one and moving to a new high. We went into this, and I had a lot of questions about this. This is a range right here, sure, but really what it is we've got an uptrend, and we're having problems going higher here. But the market is so strong it doesn't really sell off, so it just works sideways back over to the main trend line, and then it works higher. And then finally you get your break, and you get 2 legs up to a new high, and the market sells off. And I mean, that's perfect price action. And even this one, you get this correction, and you really get a couple of legs up, and then the sell off on it, which creates the break of the brown one. I mean, and just so remember, price action is layers. And so within this brown channel is the blue channel. And if you go within there, there's some shorter term trends and little sideways stuff. And so it all lays on top of each other. It's layers. And that's why price action works at any level, on any chart. It's universal and it works. But it's layered, so make sure you understand that. And I'm going to say this again. I'm going to start saying this almost daily if I can remember. But we are not pattern traders. We are reading this chart. And that's why most of you don't know what the heck's going on, because you can't read this chart. You don't understand what prices are doing. You can't find these channels. You can't find these trends. And so you're just guessing at what prices are doing. And you're never going to be successful guessing. So this takes time. So learning to read this chart is no different than being a English speaker only and then trying to learn to read Russian, or being a Russian speaker only and then trying to learn to read Portuguese or Spanish or whatever, or Chinese. You're trying to learn a foreign language, something that doesn't compute well because you don't know it. So if you're a native English speaker and you don't know any foreign language, and two Russian guys, you walk in a room full of Russian people, let's say, and they're speaking Russian, you think you're going to know what the heck's going on? No, you're going to just be guessing. You might pick up somebody laughing, oh yeah, somebody said something funny, or you might pick up that they're talking about some object they're holding in their hand. Well, you could probably do the same thing on this chart. You might pick up some little something, but you don't have a clue what prices are doing. And you're never going to be successful until you can read this chart. And here's the real kicker, is it's not hard to know that we're going up and that we're probably going to even try to get a measured move. That's the easy part. The hard part is knowing how we're going to get there. And you can see it's kind of a conundrum. Look how long it took us to get there. It took us all day, really almost into 2:30. So it took us almost all day to get there. So we're going that way, and the channel is going to help you, but eventually you get a break and you still get two legs up. So that's the harder part, and so that's where the timing part comes into it. So not only you have to know where prices are going, but then you got to learn to kind of figure out the timing and all this. And you'll get used to seeing something like today, and then tomorrow we'll go sideways, and then we'll go sideways like we have for the last couple of weeks, and it lulls everybody to sleep, and you get used to that, and you don't. It takes a long time to see all the personalities this market can throw at you, and there's several dozen of them. And for the last couple of weeks, we've gotten the tight range personality. Today we got the spike in channel personality, and tomorrow we'll get a reversal personality or something different. And there's just no way you can learn all this in a short period of time. I don't care what your IQ, I don't care if you've got a 250 IQ. That probably is a detriment to you because you're going to be a very common sense person, a very book oriented, smart oriented, and this trading is just the opposite. You almost have to be a contrarian almost. And this is a difficult skill to learn, and it's a skill, make no doubt about it. And I try to tell people that, and people think they think they're going to read a book or read a manual, practice for a couple of weeks, and they're going to get rich as traders. Well, if you're thinking that, I don't want to burst your bubble, but you're 100 miles from the truth. There's no pattern, there's no setup, there's no easy setup that's going to make you $500 a day, because they don't exist. The only way you're going to make $500 a day is learn to read this chart. And if you learn to read this chart, you not only can make $500 a day, you might make $5,000 a day. You might make $50,000 a day, depending on how deep your pockets are and what kind of risk you're willing to take. But you can get rich. But if you treat this like a business and you treat this like a job, and you come in and you extract your salary every day and you start small and work up, you're really going to make a living short term, but eventually you can get rich, and you eventually will get rich if you stick with it. But you're not going to learn this in a couple of weeks. You're not going to probably learn this in a couple of months, and if you're lucky, you'll learn it in a couple of years. And I said if you're lucky. So if you've got any other expectations, then you're just whistling in the wind. And I'm just telling you, it's just like saying I'm going to be a medical doctor and I'm going to do this in 2 years. It's impossible. Sure, there's probably one person that's got a photographic memory, one or two people that might read every medical book and could go past and do it in 2 years, but that person is one in billions. And it's going to be the same. The average person is not going to learn this in less than 2 years. It's probably going to take more than that. It took me about 2 years. So, but I had a head start, and I had a little different background than most of you will. And I did it faster than most. So, I had a knack for it. But so that's not to say that some of you can't do it in 2 years, and somebody might do it in less than 2 years, but you're going to be the rare. Most of you think it's not going to be the ones that think they are. It's generally the ones that come in that have no expectations, and they just the people that do the best at this are the ones that have never traded before. They don't have all that crazy mess in their heads that they read that's 100% wrong, that they read in all these books and forums and people selling them stuff and ideas. They don't have that. All they know is what I gave them, and they read it They say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. This is what it says to do. And they go do it, and they have success right out of the gate. And guess what? They're very successful early on. And then they start hanging out in these forums. They start reading other books. And guess what? And the next thing you know, they're losing. And they come to me and they say, I don't know what happened. In the beginning, I was doing so well. And now I'm doing this. And I say, well, send me your chart and let me look at it. And they'll send me their chart. And they say, well, I read this so-and-so. Or I picked this up in somebody else's course. It's frustrating as heck. We got it down to a science. It works. Believe it and trust it, or don't. That's all I know to tell you. We got it. I got it down to a science. If you follow the rules and do what I tell you, and follow the learning process, eventually you'll learn this. It's not for everybody because this is a skill, and just like not everybody can be a professional football player. Not everybody can be a day trader. That's just the bottom line. It's a certain skill set. You got to have patience. You got to have analytical abilities. You've got to be able to see things differently. It's just like I did an experiment one time where you put up the picture, and some people will see a picture of a lion. Somebody else may see a picture of an elephant, and some people may see them both. Usually, I can see them both, and some people will see one or the other. And I think that's really what happens with charts. It's the way our brains work. It's the way we're wired. Some people can see these trends. I can glance at this chart and see these trends and not even draw them. Of course, I've been doing it 20 plus years too, so that helps. But I can see these, and I can go back and watch my old videos and look at my channels, and I'm saying, ooh, I was off there, which at the time I thought I was dead on. But I can see now that since I've gotten better, so I've gotten better at it too, because it's a skill. And I'm pretty good at it now. I can glance at it and see it and don't even really have to draw them anymore. So that's 12 minutes of me on my soapbox that we hadn't talked about any trade yet. And I'm trying to shorten these things. So I just can't keep my mouth shut. I apologize, but sometimes I just have to say these things. So you got to learn to read this chart. If you're ever going to there's no patterns. You can see the same pattern over and over and over, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Why? Because it's the context of the chart. It's the market structure. If you see that pattern with the right market structure, it works. But if it's not in the right context, in the right market structure, it doesn't work. So that's why you have to be able to learn to read the chart. So let's talk about the trades. We spiked up here. 7 o'clock came right in this gook right here, and you just can't trade that. It's too tight. But suddenly we get a little break lower, and it confirms a possible trend line here. I didn't really like it at that point. And by the time 9:30 came, this was a clear channel, so I didn't have this brown one on here this morning. But anyway, regardless, you can see there's 2 legs down right there. And that's a nice bullish bar. It's a relatively big bar. There's 17 ticks in that bar. But if you want to go long there, you can. Where does your stop go? It goes 1 tick below that green bar. And these are matching lows, so even though it's an inside bar, you can trade that. And you can clearly see there's a leg down, and there's a little 2-legged jog, and then another leg down. But it's really a failed break out of that congestion. So what do you expect to happen? It's going to shoot back up, and it may, since we're in an uptrend and the bias is up, it may keep going. And sure enough, it comes back and tests a few times, and it keeps going. But there's your first trade of the day, and then you come back and you get a first entry, and I don't know why I got that marked right there. Your second entry is right here. Oh, I know why I marked that. Let me put that back there. I'm like, why have I got that marked? That's not, but notice there's a new low. There's a first entry, and there's a failed second entry short, but it still triggers here. So that's why I put that there. You still really don't need it there because you're not entering here, but this was a failed second entry short, but you end up getting a second entry long either way. So, so you could take the failed second entry short, or you could take the second entry long, or you could take them both. So that was the key. That was the reason I had them both. I didn't want to forget to talk about the failure, which I would have if I hadn't had that on there. So now we're going sideways here, and it's almost a repeat pattern. Notice that we're going sideways and we drop out again. Same thing, going sideways. It's a repeat pattern. The only difference is we don't get a good signal bar. You make a little 2-bar matching low there, so, and that's very bullish. You probably couldn't have got in this trade because it gaps over and takes on up. But if you could get in this trade, you might take this. It's really, I really would like to see a matching low. You really don't want to trade on that one because that's very bearish, a little bitty inside bar. But you can see it bouncing off that trend line too, working up. And that's your third touch of it, and you do get 2-bar matching low there. Let me make this bigger. That's still really hard to see. So and this is still a failed break lower, so you might take that. It's not perfect. I like it just because it's kind of, you get your trend line off of it, and it fits really well. I mean, you can confirm this channel with that really, because you can see the midline working, you can see the upper side working. But you run up, you come back, you get a higher low here, but again, it's almost another repeat pattern, and that signal bar is not as good. But if you argue for this one, you can almost argue for that one. So we'll put a green one here too, because it's almost the same thing. But the better trade is to wait here, and you can see how it takes off this time. So that tells you that the smarter traders are waiting. They didn't quite trust this one, and so they wait until you get a higher low, and that's a failed second entry short. Notice that new low, first entry, second entry, it fails. So if we go higher, look at it run on up. That's where your smart traders got in. You make a new high, first entry, second entry. I'm not sure. It looks like that might have actually gone a tick or tick or so higher, but that's still 2 legs back. And even if you don't look at it as 2 legs back, it's still, notice we're going sideways and you drop out. I don't have my line on there. It's just another, that same pattern again. You're going sideways and it drops out the bottom, and there's an uptrend, so the bias is up, and it bounces and off it goes again. And when you start to see these little bars that just keep going higher and higher and higher, and they got lots of stems, it doesn't look like it, but that's a strong trend. And you can see this thing just keeps going all day, and most of your corrections are very shallow. And when we start going from side to side in the channel, we don't really back up, we just kind of go sideways. That's a strong trend. So 3 times you've seen that pattern there. We work on up, you come back first entry, second entry, but again you got a little bit of congestion and it drops. It's right off the trend line, fairly bullish bar, second entry long. Take that trade. There's a higher low right here, breaks lower, turns and goes out the other side. It takes it a minute, and you can see there's another little trend within this blue 2-tiered channel, which is a trend within the brown channel. So there's your layers again. And we're moving on up. There's a failed second entry short right there. That's too congestive. We're too far. We've been too far away from the EMA. This is a strong trend, so it could go higher. It is off the midline, and we bounced there a few times, but we came back here. So I just think you're better off to skip that one. It comes back here again and bounces. But notice you make a new high, first entry, and then there's you another second entry right off the key entry point. It's also right off the midline of the brown channel. Easy place to go long. There's a higher low right here. I didn't mark it. There is enough room to get out. I probably should have marked this one, but there's a lot of sideways action. That's congestion. I'll at least make it green. And then there's your failed second entry short. Again, right off the blue trend line. Nice bullish bar. It's a little close to these highs, but you really are real close about having room to get out, and the trend's up and it's off the trend line. And we're still making higher. Even here, even though we're starting to go sideways, we're still making higher highs and higher lows. So, and that's off the key entry point, the EMA. Take that trade. And as soon as you enter it, you probably think, oh, I messed up. But this is why we put our stop where we put our safety stop, because look, if you put it anywhere else, you got stopped out. But if you put it where we teach you, this trade went on and you had a winning trade. And then guess what? You're running down first entry, you're running down second entry, and you get that little trap at the bottom, that little failed drop lower again. Boom, off it goes. You actually come back here and you get a higher low, but look at that. That's congestion. Look how flat that EMA. It's too dangerous. It works, but really you should be seeing rejection here, and we're not. And so prices are probably trying to come back to this trend line. And so it's just you could tick up here and turn straight down. It goes a little higher and it would have worked, but you're better off to wait. And then it comes down first entry, and then there's another second entry there. But guess what? It's the same thing. And this time, even though it worked this time, nope, look what happens this time. It doesn't work. And then you actually make a new high, and you get a first entry, second entry, and now you're right off the key entry point. You're right at the very low of the support. Go long right there and look at it go. That's what prices were doing here. And if you can read this chart, you probably know, you can see the brown channel coming into play, and you know we're probably trying to get back over here. And the market's just too strong to sell off, so it just kind of works sideways. And once it gets here, boom. At the end of every day, not only study your trades, but study your chart. And I'll talk about that in a minute before we close up, hopefully. And then we run up. You are in a little bit of a range here, so you got to be careful going long up here at these highs. You want a good setup, and you just don't really get one, and then suddenly you get a break. But you don't want to go short yet. So even right here, I just wait. You get the break, 2 legs down. So even in that, you get perfect price action. You get a close outside, 2 legs down, and then boom. And it's unfortunate, but you just don't get a good chance to enter this. Somebody asked me about, they entered right here. There is a 2-bar matching low. It's probably going to act. If this would have broken lower and turned and went up, I'd say maybe go long there. Because this has been a strong trend day, and this is the first break, and this is played out, and this looks pretty good. But I would want to see a reversal pattern on the other side of the EMA, and that's what I was waiting on, and we didn't get it. And then finally, you come back here and you get 2 legs back to the EMA, second entry long. There's where you enter. All you get's a scalp, and then it comes back again, and unfortunately, we're just going sideways again. And you never really get another chance to enter. Of course, now we've had our break and a new high, and we're still working towards, but prices are still working. And if you know where that measured move is, that's what that blue line is, and look how we came within 1 tick of meeting that. And you could have had that line on there at 7:30 this morning. I could have told you there's a good chance that's where prices are going at 7:30 this morning. And people will say, how'd you know? Well, I know what measured moves are. And if we're, with the strong move up, if we get a measured move, that's where we're going. Now, we could have traded up in here and found resistance here, and it turned out to be a range day. But if that happened, I'd switch gears. But as long as we're trending and we're staying within our trend lines, even once we get out, you still expect the retest of the high. And you'd have thought here, when we were coming down, you'd have thought probably here, there's no way we're reaching a measured move. And you'd have definitely probably thought it when we turned down here. But guess what? We still got within 1 tick. And if I adjusted my line and looked real close, we might find out that I had it a hair too high. Look at there. To the tick. I mean, that doesn't happen by accident. Trust me. It does not happen by accident. I can show you. You can go back and watch videos over and over. Sure, sometimes it doesn't work because it turned out to be a range day, or we turned down early. But I will tell you this: if you turn down early and you don't get anywhere close, you can probably expect a bigger move to the downside, and then you would probably look for some kind of measured move to the downside. Like right here, once we made this leg down and we had that 2-legged correction, measure that leg right there. and look for a measured move. And what do you know? Guess where we went? We actually went a few ticks further. This stuff works. But I was going to tell you something else, and I can't remember what it was now. Maybe I should have talked about it. There was something I was going to come back and rehash again. Can't remember what it was, but you got to learn to read this chart. You're not trying to, if you're just trying to look for patterns, I will tell you, if you're going to be a pattern trader, the best pattern you could ever trade that you probably even could be profitable on if you work on it a little bit is two-legged pullbacks to the key entry point in a trend. And there were several of those on here today. If you'd have just traded those today, you'd had 4 or 5 trades and you'd had 4 or 5 winners. That's a very powerful pattern. But the key to the reason it's so powerful is you're seeing it. The market moves in twos, and that's why it works. That's the whole idea behind it. Is 2 legs of correction, and the trend starts back again. And you can see those legs at every level. You can see them at the very small level, like here. That's a 2-legged. Notice you got a move down, a move back up, and a move down. There's 2 legs of correction right there, and it took off again. And then there's 2 legs of correction back to the upside after the break, and it sells off. I mean, the market does this over and over and over, and that's the whole secret behind second entries. So another almost 30-minute video when I'm trying to keep them under 20 minutes, and I guess I'm never going to get there. I might as well give up. But hopefully it was some good information. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it was worth the 30 minutes to some of y'all. If it wasn't, I apologize for being so long-winded, but I feel like everything I talked about was important, and sometimes I think these things need to be said. And it never fails. Every time I get on my soapbox and say something, somebody will write me an email and say, hey, I felt like you were talking directly to me, and that solved a lot of my problems. That answered a lot of my questions. So generally, I don't believe in coincidence. Generally, things happen for a reason, and some reason these ideas pop in my head, and then usually it's speaking to somebody. But I'm going to wrap it up before we do actually make 30 minutes. We'll be back again tomorrow, and believe it or not, we're going to wrap up another week tomorrow. I just don't know where the time's going. This has just been, it's going to be Thanksgiving here and then Christmas again, and it just seemed like we didn't even have a summer. Especially to be locked down with all this virus stuff. I mean, it's crazy times. And and another thing is I think we made another new high today. Believe it or not, this market was given up and written off for dead forever just a couple of months ago, and now we're back making all-time highs again. Don't ever write this thing off. I've learned that it's, just when you think it's done and over and it's going to evaporate into oblivion and everybody's going to lose every dime they got, the thing's making new highs again. So anyway, I'm done for today. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. Hope you had a great day. Hope you have a better one tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.